this webinar where we're going to focus and talk about the English Now Learning Circles project. This project has been generously supported by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation, and we look forward to learning together, and I hope you'll have lots of questions for us as we have a lot of our program partners here. I am Priyanka Sharma. I'm the Vice President of the US portfolio of World Education based in Boston. And I'm joined here today with my colleague and a co-lead on this project, Kathleen O'Connell, Lindsay from the Free Library of Philadelphia, Laurice from Literacy DuPage, Yexica from Genesis Center in Rhode Island, very close, our neighbors here in Boston, Ahu Moser from Maryland, as well as Marianne Peterson. It has been a pleasure to work with this group as we have worked on the Learning Circles project for a bit. And today we want to talk to you about this innovative blended learning circle model that we initially piloted some years ago and have been refining with our project partners ever since. And today, we'll give you a little bit of context about the project, introduce you to some of our program partners whose name I just mentioned, and they'll share some of their experiences and especially best practices and their learnings from institutionalizing these learning circles in their organizations. And we hope that this will spark some ideas, and you will have questions for us to see how you can perhaps institute them in your program. So to get us started, I just want to talk a little bit more about this, what are English Now Learning Circles? We have been working on this idea of learning circles, which is a flexible model of peer learning where learners work together on an online course, either in person or virtually. And there are some key aspects to this model that differentiate it from like a regular class. Something that you see in the photo here is, of course, looks like from another era, which was literally less than 2 years ago, where learners accessed online courses, but in person together. And there's peer learning is, I think, what is the strength of this model and how we're using and leveraging online learning technology to increase their access to learning opportunities. And you'll kind of get a sense of the idea, you get a pretty good sense of the model by the end of this hour. Kathleen, you want to talk a little bit more about how learning circles are structured?
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you for coming today. Yeah, so the model itself, we've keeping it very flexible. So programs can use it in any way that kind of fits their setting and their needs, the needs of their learners. The agenda that you see in front of you is the one that most programs like try and stick to, but they can make changes as they see fit. So the check-in part can be structured so that learners respond to a question or a prompt, for instance, maybe about the online work that follows, or it can be sort of an informal chat where everybody has a chance to speak, and you kind of build the group feeling there. And many programs use the check-in as a time for the learners to take the lead. Kind of works well for that. And we'll talk more in the next slide about the online learning piece, because this has changed, as you might imagine, since Learning Circles went to a virtual mode. When we were face-to-face, which may happen again in the near future, learners would then at this time go off, maybe to a bank of computers, or there were tablets, or even on their own phones to do the online work, and often working in pairs, just kind of help each other that way. And now the online learning part has taken many different forms, and I'm going to describe that in the next slide. Our program partners have been really creative about that, and you'll learn more from them as well. And then the activity portion is when the whole group comes comes back together. And that's, more like I would say a typical class in a way. It can be. It can be a grammar lesson or a speaking activity, sharing writings. And again, you're going to hear more about that from our program partners today. Lastly, the wrap up is I feel like it's a very important part of the learning circle. This is where a place for learners can reflect on their learning for the day, and set a goal for any kind of work they plan to do during the week between sessions. Next slide, Priyanka. Okay, so in the fall of 2020, the programs that we have here today, we've tried virtual learning circles for the first time. They were very brave, and they all approached them in different ways, in ways that sort of, fit their format. And so what you see here are the four kind of, ways I was able to sum up what programs have done. So the first one, the independent learning, sort of like a flipped model where learners move at their own pace through an online course outside of the session. So Lindsay, who will be coming up first, will talk about how she has done this. Under that, we have the independent online learning during the session. And this is where learners actually meet in Zoom and then move off to the learning platform and come back to Zoom. And we'll hear more about that from Jessica.
Kathleen, we're having a little bit of a problem with the slides. I know you can't see them. So if you can pause for just 1 second, I want to get us back to there we go. Okay, go ahead. We're on the remote learning circle format.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, everybody. I'm on my phone because we lost service at like 1:50 today. So I'm doing this without the benefit of seeing the slides. Okay, good. So, and then in the upper right corner there, so there's two ways that facilitators either share their own content or they share published content. And both of these seem to work well for learners who, maybe are accessing the circle from their phones and they're not that comfortable. And so, and it also, it works well when learners want to work, learn together with the group and they don't feel comfortable going off on their own. So those are the different ways that programs have made that work this year. And in fact, I think in all of the cases, programs have felt that it's actually worked really well. So next slide.
So I think here, Kathleen, I can ask the question that's on the screen here, which are some of your favorite online English language learning resources? And as you type that, I think one of the things that I forgot to mention at the start of this conversation is we would love to hear more about you, your name, the program you're from, the role you play within that program. So we'll get a sense of who's with us virtually. So go ahead and please introduce yourself in the chat and also share some of your favorite online English language learning resources. And especially, if you have your favorite ones and if there's a different one that your learners prefer. So as that is happening, I can talk a little bit more. Kathleen, would you like to talk about the learning resources we have used in this project?
Sure. So I'm sure that most of you recognize many or all of these resources. Of course, USA Learns is the big one because it's free, and now they've worked really hard over the past year to make it mobile ready, so people can use it on phones from home and what have you. And Burlington English is another favorite, although that comes at a cost, but oftentimes programs that are moving learners from the learning circle to their classes feel like that's a good use of that. and then the learner can keep using it once they get to the class. So there's a couple of apps in there that programs have used, and perhaps there are others that maybe your state has paid for and made available to you. This would be a really good way to use one of those platforms. I've also listed some of the sort of great platforms out there for for building digital literacy skills, so Digital Learn, North Star, GCF Learn Free, and then of course we have our own Digital Us resource hub that you should check out. So all of these resources, we will be sending these out to you in the next day or so. We will send you all of these links.
And
so let's see, I cannot see the chat.
There's been active sharing in the chat, and I feel like we'll hear more from Lindsay, who uses Coursera and Mango and some other resources that are that were new to this time around as we did the learning circles. And then we have ESL library that somebody uses. Somebody else mentioned, I think Bonnie from Genesis Center mentioned that she likes USA Learn. So it's the other thing that I wanted to just talk about for a second is that I think you'll see some apps in here too, and we had some really good experience with using learning apps within these learning circles, especially last year. So moving to the next slide, it's our pause slide, question slide. And so if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and we will try to address them as we get started on hearing from our program partners. So Kathleen, you want to introduce our first partner?
Yeah, so we're very, very excited to have 5 of our partners here. And first up, we'll have Lindsay Salford, who's coming to us from the Free Library of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Take it away, Lindsay.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks to everyone for being here. My name is Lindsay Southworth, and I'm a program manager for adult education and language learning at the Languages and Learning Center of the Free Library of Philadelphia. The Languages and Learning Center opened in 2019 as a space in the library to help adults in Philadelphia meet their individual learning goals. And the populations we work with are adults who want to learn English, adults who want to improve their basic education skills, everything from learning to read and write up to obtaining a GED or another high school equivalency. We also work with adults who want to learn languages other than English, which was actually our first foray into learning circles. So in 2019, we started offering learning circles using the peer-to-peer university model to adults who wanted to learn very beginning Spanish. And we used a library resource that everyone in Philadelphia can access for free with their library card, Mango Languages. And in this case, since it was before the pandemic, we were able to bring together a group of about 15 people who met every week. We could teach them how to use the learning platform, in our meetings, and then people practiced with the app during the week, and we would come and do the same format that Kathleen shared with you, where we check in, we'd practice our learning, we'd do some online learning together, talking about the skills that we were gaining, the questions that we had. And then we were very lucky to become connected with English Now and World Education and offer, at this point, I think we've done 5 learning circles for English language learners. And we've used Universal Class, which is another database that library card holders can access for free with their library cards in Philadelphia, as well as We Speak NYC and Coursera, which are both free open source available to anyone. On the next slide, I'll take you through sort of a model of how we run our learning circles, which is a little bit different than some other groups. It's sort of like what you might call flipped classroom, where generally the students do the online learning on their own during the week. And then we come together once a week to check in about what we've learned, troubleshoot any issues we're having with the database, and do some practice with that activity. So for example, one of the learning circles we've offered that's been really popular is writing skills for English language learners. And we use a Universal Class course on basic writing skills for English language learners. And so students will do a lesson and accompanying quizzes and activities on their own during the week. And then when they come, we'll all check in, might be, how was your week? And, what questions do you have about writing in the past tense, if that was the theme for that day? Then we'd go over the norms for our meetings, how we are with each other, how we treat each other, talk about online learning. We might explore some of the features from Universal Class so that students are really able to use the database in the full, with its full capacities and capabilities. And then maybe look at another online resource that might help for the particular writing skill that we focused on that week. Then the bulk of our meeting will be an activity where we look at the sample assignments that we were asked to write during the week through Universal Class. And we'd probably start with a whole group example of a text, again, say we're writing in the past tense, we're going over and discussing what is the author doing well, what are the mistakes in terms of using the past tense for writing. Then we get into breakout rooms where students are sharing their own writing that they did during the week and giving each other feedback. We'll usually give them sort of a rubric on what kind of feedback they want to give. Look for examples of verbs in the past tense, underline them all, see which ones are correct, which ones have mistakes. And then we'll all come back together and talk about challenges and successes we had with our writing this week connected to whatever the topic was. And then we always finish with a checkout. Also, what is the assignment we're going to be working on for the next week? And often we would review what were the goals we had for ourselves at the beginning of the course that we set, and how are we doing vis-a-vis those goals that each learner had for themselves in the course. For looking at the next slide, things that we find work really well for learning circles, using the first meeting as an orientation to what a learning circle is. We still haven't been doing learning circles for really long enough at the library that all learners are familiar with it, and we're getting new learners, seems like every month. So we want to spend that first class orienting people and helping them understand this is not a traditional class. You're going to do a lot of online learning on your own. We're going to meet once a week to support each other and practice with the skills. And that way everyone knows going into the group, what the way that a learning circle is set up and how it is different than maybe other classes they've taken. We also spend time that first class and any subsequent class that's needed demonstrating using screen share on how to navigate the course so that people feel really comfortable using the online resource on their own. I also have sort of like an open email and text policy. If anyone is having trouble using the database, I encourage them to get in touch with me so that we can make sure, ideally by week 1 or week 2, everyone's really comfortable navigating this online course so we can learn together without too many technical difficulties connected to the database. Something else that's worked well for us is setting group norms. Some of the ones that we always use are everyone is welcome here, no one knows everything, together we know a lot, make space and take space. But because we're doing a lot of work in breakout rooms where students are giving each other feedback on the work that they're doing, whether it's a writing sample or an elevator pitch. We did a career-focused English class through Coursera. We want to make sure that we've established that everyone is treating each other with respect, with kindness, with openness, so that we're able to do that sort of intimate small group work together where we're giving feedback and helping each other to improve on whatever the goal is for the course. Also, we make sure that we set goals at the beginning, the first or second session, and frequently go back to them and see, we said we wanted to improve our English pronunciation as part of this course. How are we doing on that? Someone said they wanted to feel more comfortable talking to their neighbors. How are you feeling 6 weeks into the class, 12 weeks into the class or into the group? And also making sure that we have time for any questions that students have, whether it's about the database or about the particular skill that we're working on, and time for group connection. I've really been very pleased to see how the sort of decentralized, flattened hierarchy of a learning circle has created great class dynamics where people really are able to connect with each other, especially during the pandemic. That's been such an important thing that our participants have noted. There's a lot of isolation that people are dealing with, and the online learning circles, we had reported to us that was a a big part, especially, in the first year of the pandemic, of our English language learners feeling connected, like they had community, the chance to meet new people and to keep working on their English skills. I'm seeing a question in the chat. Yeah, so I used Coursera just once. There's an English program from the University of Pennsylvania called English for Career Development. And I thought it was a really, really good course, and it worked well for the Learning Circle because there were a lot of excellent modules within Coursera, and the ability to be able to talk out and practice some of those skills, especially the interview skills and the elevator pitch skills. I felt like combining what Coursera offered and what we were able to do in the Learning Circle gave our participants really solid foundation in career skills. We actually had a wonderful success story a couple weeks ago that someone who completed the course just got hired at her first job as a pharmacy technician in the United States. That was her career in Sudan, and she was working to build up the confidence to be able to get through the job application process and the interview process in English. And yeah, I know she felt a lot more confident after taking the Coursera class in the Learning Circle, and we were really happy to see that it resulted in her getting the job that she wanted. Are there other questions? I think I have a minute before we go to Larice. Nope, I don't have a minute before we go to Larice. But if there are more questions, I can answer in the chat.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. What a inspiring, encouraging story. And I think Lindsay's here, so if you have any questions, keep on asking them in the chat, and we'll find ways of making time for questions as we move along. Larice, we would love to hear from you and your experience implementing learning circles.
Thank you, and thank you, Lindsay. My name is Larice Hoffman, and I am the program manager with Literacy DuPage. We are a volunteer-based community organization located in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. And we serve a diverse group of learners by providing one-to-one English language instruction and ensure equitable access to our low-income individuals who live in DuPage County. You could go to the next slide. So we participated in the Learning Circle project in the fall of 2021. So we came in kind of on the tail end. And today I'm going to speak to you specifically about the onboarding process that we use for selecting a facilitator, especially in a volunteer-based program, because most of these other programs, they were teacher-led, but I think there are some key points that we identified in selecting a facilitator because the success of the Learning Circle really relies on that facilitator. So you could go to the next slide. So our program hosts several conversation groups through neighboring libraries. And right now, all of our groups are meeting virtually. So to begin the process of choosing a facilitator, we started with the conversation group leaders, since they had the experience of conducting group discussions, and they were already familiar with the virtual platform. We used Zoom. We then assessed the facilitator's digital skills using either a brief survey, a discussion with them, and performance-based demonstration. We wanted to assess, were they able to share their screen, navigate through a platform. And the survey included questions about their familiarity with devices, online platforms, what communication tools that they were familiar with. This is an essential component of the onboarding process. It's very important that a facilitator is capable of troubleshooting problems and providing support to the group members. The next process that we used was to explain the elements of an effective learning circle. The facilitator needs to develop a participative framework that includes distribution of responsibilities, empowering students to take charge of their own learning. They have to develop a sense of community and encourage peer-to-peer support. They're also responsible for building learner confidence and develop leadership roles within the group. The next step was to identify or suggest resources and online platforms that they can incorporate into the chosen topic of the group. Again, it's important to select courses that people are interested in and meet the needs of the student. And most importantly, it was our role to support the facilitator. So that was my role as the program manager. On the right-hand side of the screen, we identified some key characteristics of a facilitator. Make sure they understand their role. They are not a teacher. Their role is to guide, keep sessions on track, and ensure active participation among the group. Another most important factor is their willingness to learn. We are continuously learning together, and it's important that your facilitator, as the group leader, is learning along with the group members. The whole concept of learning circles revolves around the concept of learning together. So in closing, it's very important to develop an onboarding process that fits your program needs. A good facilitator equips the students with tools they need to remain engaged and be successful. They encourage collaboration, which leads to higher group participation and engagement outside of the meeting time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurice. And next, we want to talk to you a little bit more about how another project was able to implement learning circles in very similar but yet different ways. This was Holyoke Community College. And one of the things that I think Lindsay was talking about and Laurice mentioned too is what is the context within which learning circles fit within your organization? And I think that's a question, if you were part of this project, would be one of the first questions that Kathleen and I would ask you, is what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And for Holyoke Community College, it was that they had a long wait list for their English language classes that they just didn't have the capacity to place students in. So, and historically too, history being 3 years ago, that's kind of how we got learning circles started in the first place, is thinking about how a model like this could really help programs serve more learners where they might need less intensity, and that's what a learning circle offers. And just because of the content is usually online or accessible remotely, they could once they get into the rhythm, they can definitely intensify what they're learning because they're in control of their own learning. And then most of these learning circles were offered remotely. And of course, I think as Lindsay mentioned, serve a big role in developing that community connection and learners actually meeting up, as you can see here, just to kind of get to see each other in person in the middle of a pandemic. And you can read more about Holyoke Community College and other programs that have been part of this in our implementation guide, which we're going to share towards the end of the webinar today. The other project, the other program that we worked with is the Literacy Volunteers at the Stoughton Public Library, a little south of Boston. And they had, they didn't have English language learning classes that they wanted to use learning circles with. They used it for their citizenship classes, and they used the peer learning environment and that peer bonding environment to work with several cohorts of learners as they prepared for their citizenship tests. And they had a good camaraderie going within that structure. And as you can see, they have 85% completion rate and 12 new citizens in the first year. And they continue to offer these learning circles. In terms of what they actually use, in terms of what they actually use for the content for the citizenship test prep, that's something that's part of our implementation guidebook that you should be able to access soon. So I'm going to move to Jessica from Genesis Center. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Andrea Capas Santiago. I always love mentioning my full name because I'm Puerto Rican and I like mentioning my mama. She made me. So that's why it's so long. I am from Genesis Center, and Genesis Center had their first learning circle in spring of last year. You can go to the next slide. The way we started doing it is that we had two learning circles, one that was going in the mornings and one in the evenings. Now we also have a learning circle that is surrounding family literacy. One of the things that we did to make sure that our students were, that our students were all prepared and excited to get in class and that nothing could interfere with their learning was seeing them in the building. My supervisor, Bonnie Taylor, was there, and she was the one that gave them the Chromebooks and helped them sign into Zoom, explained how Zoom worked a little bit. And also she helped them create their own accounts in USA Learns, which is what they were using to work independently. Many of the students there also, once their learning circle finished, they enjoyed it so much and felt confident enough to continue in more intensive English courses at Genesis Center. Go next slide, please. Okay, the way my learning circle was working is that we use WhatsApp, Zoom, and USA Learns. In 4 steps, the first thing we did was that attendance and greetings and class agenda and all of the material was sent through WhatsApp. The reason why we use WhatsApp is because my class was all Latinas and we all had WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a free online app that you can download to your phone, and you can use it as long as you have Wi-Fi or internet. You can use it with anybody around the world. So a lot of us have it to communicate with people from back home. And it was just a no-brainer for me to use that with my class. So that's where they would get everything, including their Zoom link. They would get their Zoom link in their email, but I would always send them a reminder of the link in WhatsApp in case some of them couldn't connect with their Chromebook in that given moment. They could still use it in their smartphones. So once they get all the information, we go into Zoom, we check in. I'm like, hey, we're going to do this today. This is what we're going to be concentrating in. If you have any questions, that's where they're like, okay, teacher, I have a doubt on this, I have a doubt on that, before they went to their independent learning. They went to their independent learning and they would do their work, and they would also use USA Learns. USA Learns is a platform that allows teachers to check the progress of their students. It's completely free, and it has various modules and various topics and various levels. So as the teacher, you would select the level that would be best suited for your class. And from there, you create your own class and you enroll the students there. You need to have your students enrolled in order to see their progress. So once they finish their work, they have extra time, they dedicate it to USA Learns. After a certain time, they have their schedule, they would connect back to Zoom, and that's where we did breakout rooms to discuss our work. We did conversational practice in breakout rooms, and then we made sure that we reviewed all our work together. Next slide, please. Now, some of the highlights from this particular learning circle was that we had a lot of peer support. When using USA Learns, students are on their own. If they have questions, they can definitely come back to me and ask me stuff. But I had students that didn't understand, that they weren't understanding why they were getting certain things wrong, and they would call each other. Mind you, these were students that didn't know each other, that weren't really connected in that atmosphere of in-person classroom. But the community was so amazing that they started calling each other, texting each other, FaceTiming each other to understand the work among themselves before reporting to me like, oh, I had this problem, but I resolved it because this person helped me. It also helped them build confidence. Latinas are very, very competitive, and I love taking advantage of that. So we used Kahoot as one of the friendly activities where they had to compete with each other in order to win. And the person that answered the fastest and answered the most correct answers was the winner. One of the things that they had to do was a final project, and that's where their digital skill building started going up. They used Google Google Slides and Google Docs, and even a student created her own short video. They were very comfortable at home doing everything. And at the end, like I mentioned before, a lot of the students were very excited and grateful for this course because it helped them build up their confidence, see that they could go into more classes, and they started enrolling in different courses. So yes, continue. And now I am going to leave it to Ahu Mosir, and she's gonna take over.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much. And also thank you to Priyanka and also for Kathleen for including us in this project. We have really enjoyed this project a lot. As you could see on the screen, this is a little bit about us, who we are. We are the Literacy Council of Montgomery County, and we go by SCMC. We are based in Rockville, Maryland. We have, as I said at the beginning, we really have enjoyed being part of the English Now learning circles. But in addition to learning circles, my organization also offers so many programs from very traditional with managed ESL enrollment to GED classes to GED lab with more flexible instruction. We also offer one-on-one for our the basic and beginner level learners. At the same time, we do also one-on-one for our ABE level learners. So, and then digital literacy, as I did mention, GED, and digital literacy is a really big push for us. We also do lots of workplace ESL and GED, and also a lot of workforce activities, workshops, and we do lots of digital literacy boot camps for our learners to get them ready for our classes. I think we could go to the next slide. Our learning circles, we really have found them to be really necessary, especially for our learners who have never ever been to in a learning environment in the United States, and they really then they are very uncomfortable, and then they don't know what to expect. So our aim has always been with the learning circles to create that safe and encouraging environment. So if you are someone from another country, an immigrant, and if you really do not know what to do, you could be shy. There is always that peer pressure, and you don't know if you say a word wrong, how is that going to be taken by other students or fellow students in the group. So it was our first focus when we first started. I mean, we do the same thing in any other programs that we offer as well, but always and always safe and encouraging environment for our learners. So our learning circle groups have never been big. We focused on keeping these groups very small, maybe 5 or 7 students in each group. We didn't go more than 10 students. We wanted to have this focused group with very, very personal kind of attention by the teachers and also teacher assistants. We didn't want to keep these groups big, so we could help our learners to feel comfortable, to open up, to get the need or to get the support that they do need. I could say that I think as an organization, we have been very fortunate to have our instructional specialist, Alexandra Villamizar. She's our senior content person. She is the master teacher. So she was tasked with a couple of other staff members to prepare our in-house curriculum, which is called E2E. She has been spearheading this this effort in curriculum. She has been working very hard, and she has been delegating, some duties to other staff members, and she's very and then she's a master teacher, so she knows what our students' needs are, and then she's just great, and we are very grateful for her support and help. And we have, yes, grammar lessons, but these are thematic activities. So if there is a subject, let's say in reading, the same focus keeps on in listening, reading, and writing. So everything is embedded. So, and the grammar lessons are obviously never lengthy grammar lessons. They're all life skills based. And so the students are learning while practicing. Maybe oftentimes we really do not tell them that what the name of the grammar tense is. So they are learning by practicing and by participating in activities. And I think, as I did mention at the beginning when I said we really want to create that safe and encouraging environment, but we also would like for our learners to gain that confidence. You know, so oftentimes they are not ready to open up. Sometimes it takes weeks and weeks to, you know, to say a word, or it takes weeks to say something to a partner, or just ask a question. So we want them to gain that confidence. We want to show them that the learning also takes place outside this virtual learning environment. So we would like for them to communicate, we would like for them to share, and also we would like for them to improve on their digital citizenship skills. So as we have Alexandra as our master teacher, we also have a staff member. His name is Raul Marin, and he's our senior manager of online learning. So his main focus is to train our students, our teachers, facilitators, and TAs about the digital literacy needs of the organization. How do learning circles work? Our small group circles meet in the day or in the evening. They meet only once a week. We have offered so far close to 16 learning circles since the day we started being a partner in this wonderful project. And we have offered small group circles in citizenship skills and in ESL. And we have offered them in the day and evening. And then always there's a possibility to also offer them on weekends as well. I think learning circles are really good to really allow learners or prospective learners, if they are on the wait list. So if there are students who are on the wait list to get into the next classes, and oftentimes, you know, we do get registrations right after the classes started, and we do not place them in classes right in the middle of the session or after 2 or 3 classes. So these learning circles really provide that instruction for our prospective learners. We do not tell them, oh, you need to wait 2 or 3 months, but we provide them as soon as we have their registrations, as soon as we have 5 or 6 students that we could open a small group, small online learning circle, we could open a group so they could start learning, and they could start learning about what they need to do to move to the next. And we have facilitators. And then while I was listening to my colleagues here, and then I heard that majority of the instructors are maybe volunteers, but our teachers, our instructors, they are paid instructors. But we are very lucky because we do have volunteer educators, or we have prospective volunteer educators who want to be part of our classes, our groups, our conversation groups. So, and then we ask them if they would be willing to sign up as a teaching assistant. So they do. Sometimes we do get so many teaching assistants for a small group, and then we sometimes find ourselves in a situation to tell them, you know what, let's move you to another group. This group has too many teacher assistants. As I said in the previous slide, we have our own curriculum, and then we are lucky because our curriculum developer prepares it, and at the same time she also gets feedback from the facilitators where we need to make some tweaks or changes. So, you know, we are very happy with the work that Alexandra has put into the curriculum, and also the tech readiness, and it is important. So we use North Star, and then I saw it as one of the resources when Kathleen and Priyanka shared. So North Star is great to identify the digital needs of the learners. We use it as an assessment, and based on based on the results, we offer our learners a digital literacy bootcamp, and I can talk about the digital literacy bootcamp maybe some other time, but Raul Marin leads that effort, and we teach learners how to do Zoom or Google Meet, basic online digital skills. So when they join their learning circles online virtually, they're all good to go. So they are not really confused what to do. And the breakout rooms are important. So what we do is that our learning circles are always 2 hours. First 1 hour, everybody's together in the main room. And then the teacher puts the TAs and the students in breakout rooms for 30 minutes with the activities that were given to the TAs by the main teacher, and then they're in that breakout room for 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, everybody comes back to the main room with the teacher and the teacher assistant, so as the wrap up. And we like Burlington, but I think Priyanka was saying it, or Kathleen was saying at the beginning, it's very expensive. And it is very difficult to buy seats for all of the students, and it costs a lot of money. I believe it's close to $100 per seat. I wish there was a way, to make it a little bit affordable for the programs. But USA Learns is great, especially the citizenship content. When we did learning circles for our citizenship groups, and we use USA Learns, and they are really, really great. And this is a screenshot of what Alexandra prepared for the curriculum. As you could see, this is a listening exercise. She has incorporated a QR code where students could scan, and the teachers as well, so they could listen. And then, as you can see, it's multiple choice, very easy to understand. The layout is easy to follow, and all of our lessons are very easy to follow, very specific to our learners' needs. So if you have any questions about that, please do not hesitate to email me or let
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abu. And
No problem.
last and not the least, I want to introduce our mentor, facilitator, and our sort of champion learning circle, who's literally written a book on it. No, not really a book, but multiple blogs on it. Marianne Peterson, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Priyanka. Thanks for that nice intro. I'm going to keep this really brief because a lot of what I was going to share has been covered by the other programs. So I'll just touch on a couple of things that our program has done. I'm also going to turn my video off, but I wanted to say hi. We have, I'm coming to you from Charlottesville, Virginia. Our program is for adult education, but I work on the English language learner side. I've been facilitating learning circles for 4 years. I think we started at the very beginning, or maybe the second cycle into the English Now project. So first, we were tied to the X Prize, which some of you might be familiar with, which gave us access to these incredible language learning apps that we could use for content. But we used that for the first 2 years of our program. But one thing I wanted to emphasize is that our learning circles have evolved over the years to meet our learners' needs, to meet changes because of the pandemic. So the way we started and the way we look now are really different. And that's one of the most exciting things about learning circles. It's flexible, so you can make it adjust to your program. Next slide. Of course, we went virtual during the pandemic, so that was our first experience with that. But we're now back face-to-face and in person again. We've moved away from using CEL Ed as to provide our learning content, and we've actually asked our learners to give us suggestions about what they would like to learn. They get to vote on topics, and they therefore kind of get to construct their own learning circle. During the pandemic, they really asked for information about our community because they were new to the community and couldn't get out and explore it in the way that they would have normally. So we designed an entire learning circle to address that need. So I just want programs who are interested in this model to know that you can start one way, but it can evolve and it can remain flexible. Next slide. One really successful thing that we've done in different ways over the years is to give, we try as much as we can to give learners ownership and make the learners the leaders. So when we're using an online platform, as we did with the learning app CellEd, but even other things that we've used for our content and our classes, we give learners an opportunity to evaluate that content. And in the case of CellEd, the learners had a lot of input for the app developer about how to make the language lessons a little bit more user-friendly. So one of the exercises that we did as a program was that the learners practiced, drafted, and then actually sent some feedback to the app developer. And the app developer then contacted the learners for some more information and changed the app based on their requests and their feedback. So it was so empowering for the learners to know that they'd had a hand in making that a better experience for future learners. Other programs have touched on this, but I also, no matter what you're doing for your learning content, at the end of every class, I have learners set their intention for the following week. And sometimes they just say, I'm going to try to fit in 15 minutes while I'm waiting at my child's bus stop. And that's fine, but they set their own intention and then we check back in with them the next week. I think that's it for that slide.
So we're going to pause here for some questions. Marianne has a really good blog that she updated recently around 6 steps for running virtual learning circles. And I'll either add that when we send out the slides or I'll add it to the chat. But as we're wrapping up here, I want to see if there's any questions. There aren't a lot of questions in the chat, kind of goes to show how comprehensive all the few presenters have been in sort of covering the way you implement learning circles. But we would love to get questions if, as you know, so many of you are online here. Kathleen, do you want to go over the funding? Well, learning circles are awesome, but how do you integrate them in your programming?
Right. Yes. Thank you, Priyanka. Yeah, so we have seen that, we had a pilot, which I think started in 2016, and then in 2018, we had this scale up, and so many of the programs were able to keep their learning circles going. And then we've heard of other programs that have not been affiliated with them, English Now. And so we've talked to them about how do you fund these. And, the good news about learning circles is that, they meet once a week for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so in that sense, you could have a teacher sort of add hours onto a teacher's time, which I think is the way that a lot of programs have done this. And we've heard, too, I don't know a lot about this, but apparently you can use a match from your state grants. So like with federal funding, Title II funding, if the person has at least 12 hours of in-person instruction, you may be able to use the learning circle hours. And then if you can count the time that the learners are, working on, an approved online platform like USA Learns or Burlington English or something like that, you could also count those hours. Yeah, and so, there's other funding coming down the pike. The last thing I have on there is the Digital Equity Act. And this is something that David Rosen, who has worked with us on this, and he actually has a really nice piece that we'll also be sending along to you about learning circles and the possibility for funding. And we don't know for sure, but possibly, this might support digital literacy learning circles for English language learners with that funding. So just some thoughts there. We'll see, what if any of those make sense for you. Next slide, Priyanka. So we've developed over the years all sorts of resources. They are on our website, the EdTech Center, edtech@worlded.org. And again, we will be sending out those links to you. So we have several different guides, and we also have a lot of resources, some of which came from the programs. So programs, might have developed a, sort of a forum where students kind of jot jot down their password and username, and then kind of track their hours, that sort of thing. So we have all sorts of resources that you can take a look at, and I hope they'll be helpful. And don't hesitate to get in touch. Next slide, Priyanka. This is something very exciting that World Ed sponsored. This is a Learning Circles course, so an actual 3-part course that Pro Literacy put together. It's new. It just was put out there like last week, I think. And so what they've done is they've also put together a training guide, because they thought it would be great for programs to have several people do this together, sort of in a learning circle group. So I hope you'll take a look at that. They used a lot of stuff from our guides, and they pulled info from other places as well, but it's really quite well done. So I hope you'll check that out. Next slide.
And, you know, there's, feels like there's, you might have questions. Feel free to reach us at our emails here. Kathleen and I and some of our partners will also be talking about learning circles in other webinars, but then also at COABE in the coming months. And we look forward to connecting with you. And I really hope that the conversations today have energized you and answered some of the questions you had about learning circles, and raised some questions about learning circles. And we would love to hear both. You can get in touch with us through the EdTech Center at worlded.org. And I would really like to take this minute to thank our wonderful, wonderful program partners. It's been a total treat to work with all of you over the course of the last couple of years. And, you know, it's definitely been a joy that Kathleen and I have shared, working closely with Lindsay, Laurice, Yexica, Bonnie from Genesis, Ahu and her team, and as well as Marianne for more than 2 years. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a good evening, and we will be sending out the slide deck along with some of the other resources that were mentioned during this webinar soon. Thanks.